Welcome to the underground. Apparently, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. Or is there? Is that just a deception? So when your back's up against the wall and times are really tough, and they will be in the underground, are you the type of person who can cope with it? As I've said many times, if creature comforts is your forte, believe me, the underground really is not for you. You're just not going to be able to cope with it at all. You know, it entails being in many places and quickly. As I said before in a previous episode, I was in 5 cities in 7 days. It can become very disorientating, but it is absolutely necessary to avoid capture. And of course, fundamentally, you've got to be in good health. Any health problems you have, you've got to sort them out quickly. And you're going to have to do it without hospitals and general practitioners, dentists, etc. So you're going to have to be industrious, creative, and above all, experienced. And you need a damn good first aid medical kit with you. So what can I say? Illness, yes, that's the great downfall of everyone in life, in actual fact, not just those in the underground being hunted. And it will come. In my case, it came in May 2019, and I battled against it all summer. It sort of stabilised in Cardiff in July, and in August, there was an incident with a particularly obnoxious hotel owner who thought he was some sort of superhero. He'd been to the gym, and 2 or 3 times a week he went to the gym, and he'd done some martial arts and suddenly thought he was some sort of superhero. And he'd read some drivel about me on the internet and thought that he was going to, I don't know, he was going to present himself as the knight in shining armour. And so you're going to have to be able to handle yourself as well in situations like that. So, in the case of Mr. Prothero, well, he just humiliated himself because he just wasn't up to it, A flurry of kicks and punches blocked everyone, mocked him, walked off laughing. Job done, Can't report it to the police, obviously. Not that they'd actually do anything anyway, of course, which I've covered in many other videos and the reasons why. But that then set in motion a train of events whereby I had to put some very fast manoeuvres into place. And from Cardiff, I went to Southampton. I stayed in Southampton for a few days where I was actually very ill. And I decided, that I met an Indian gentleman. It was the chef at a hotel I was staying at. And it was perfectly clear that, I was actually more unwell than I realised. And he made things perfectly clear to me. And so I decided to move on to nearby Oxford. And the moment I landed there, I got off the National Express coach. My inner voice said, this is where it ends, And I guess I knew it was over, primarily because of illness. But there was absolutely no way that I was going to surrender to them. No, absolutely not. I was going to make the hunters reach out and get me. That was the honourable way to end it. Surrendering after everything I'd been through, absolutely no way. It's just never going to happen. And so there, it took me the best part of 9 weeks to recuperate, get back onto a stable footing. And then, of course, it was time to move on. And so I laid plans to relocate to York. And, well, as the ensuing scenes will show, things didn't go quite according to plan. And that's something else that will often happen in the underground. Things will not always go to plan. But yeah, when my back was up against the wall, and it was many times, I was equal to it. Many years later, I was diagnosed with chronic fistulating Crohn's disease, which obviously has wrecked my physical health. But in June 2018, at the height of the underground, I was absolutely fighting fit. Marched long distances every day with a heavy burden and burning hot sunshine. And then, of course, sadly, for some people, they get serious illness and these things come to an end. But in truth, had it not been for the intervention of Crohn's disease, would they have got me? No, absolutely not. I was 3 steps ahead of them the whole time. I had no intention of surrendering. You know, the longer I was in the underground, the longer I intended to stay in it. You know, my back was up against the wall the whole time, which is the reason why I'm actually shooting the scene up against a brick wall. I'm perfectly sure the hunters would really like to put me up against a brick wall before a firing squad, but they can't, can they? Britain hasn't become that much of a tyranny just yet. But don't give up hope, you know, the way things are going. Perhaps it will. Perhaps we will come to the firing squads up against the wall. But, you know, the simple truth is, it's like this. I don't regret one single thing. Regret is an absolutely pointless, wasted emotion. If you make mistakes in life, move on from them. Make a resolution not to make those mistakes again. But living with regret for years? No, absolutely not. No. When I had to sacrifice my fiancée, Elizabeth, because she was an absolute nightmare. Because, and understandably so, she couldn't cope with me being in the underground. It was not what she wanted. She wanted me to surrender and get it over and done with. And there was absolutely no way I was going to do that. And I explained to her the strategic reason why that was, because of a legal pincer movement. And I had to ensure that a Crown Court bench warrant kicked in, thus superseding a county court warrant, which means then at that time, when that happened, they couldn't sentence me twice for exactly the same published material. And in the event, it worked perfectly. So it's like this. I have nothing to apologise for. I regret absolutely nothing. What happened with Elizabeth was very unfortunate, but she put me in a situation. She gave me an ultimatum. And nobody gives me ultimatums, pure and simple, which is the whole reason why I was in the underground in the first place, because of the diktats of the legislative tyranny. And so we had to go our separate ways, and I don't regret it. It was painful for both of us, but that's life. When you're fighting for a higher principle, and that's what I was doing, and I'm still doing it now, you know, these people are just casualties of war. That's the way you have to look at them. You can grieve them later, but before you go into the underground, or at the very moment you go into the underground, you have to put yourself into battle mind. And then it just becomes a military operation. And everyone that you lose along the way, well, just casualties of war, collateral damage, sadly. And it sounds a little bit callous, but that's the way it is. What else can you say and do? You know, this is reality. You know, this is not some sort of fiction. I'm not going to give you false hope and feed you false and misleading information of any description. I'm telling you the way it is in reality. And so, you know, with my back up against the wall, I just carried on. Even with serious illness, I carried on. I decided I wasn't going to any hospital, despite the fact I needed antibiotics. And I continued, and within 9 weeks, using natural remedies and changing my diet completely, I was able to put myself into a position whereby I was almost recovered. And then, of course, well, because I stayed in one place for too long, bearing in mind you have to keep moving, the hunters were well and truly onto me. So remember, there are no hospitals or general practitioners in the underground, and no dentists, unless, of course, you want to be caught. So if medical complications develop, and I'm sure they will at some stage, they certainly did for me, they will for everyone, because no one is invincible. You need a good quality first aid kit packed with a raft of different plasters, dressings, low adherent dressings, surgical tape. You also need a trauma fix bandage which can treat gunshot wounds, knife wounds, etc., any form of major trauma. And then, of course, you'll pick up very simple things like scratches, bites, etc. And so, you know, you need Savlon, or in the bottle there, right in the centre, and no, that's not a urine sample, though it may look like it, it's TCP. If you can't get TCP, just go to a shop and buy a small bottle of brandy. Works just as well in actual fact. Dental problems, abscess in particular. Well, Bonjela and Anabesol, very effective. But if you've got a particularly unpleasant abscess caused by dental problems, large mouthful of brandy. Just hold it in for about 10 minutes. Breathe through your nose. The abscess will be burst. It will be drained off, and then just swallow it or spit it out, whatever. I mean, I always swallow it. I don't waste good brandy by spitting it out. That's the hardcore way of doing it. I really like brandy, and I'm not going to waste it. But, and then of course, remember a very good quality, powerful torch for nighttime operations. I use the Nebo 2K Torchy, which is 2000 lumens, turns night into day at the flick of a switch. 2 seconds, absolutely brilliant, fantastic piece of equipment. So, these are other things to be mindful of. If you're the type of person who likes creature comfort, warmth, curling up in front of the TV, the underground really is not for you. In fact, no form of hardship is for you. Leave it to those who can cope with it. If you're going to use smartphones whilst operating in the underground, you simply cannot stick to one SIM card. And obviously you can't use a contract either. It has to be pay-as-you-go at all times. Nothing but pay-as-you-go. Here's a selection of them on 3 different networks. In fact, I used all available networks when I was in the underground. And you need to have a double SIM card as well, double SIM card slot in your phone so you can change between them. In fact, I would advise you, if you're going to use particularly for live internet connections, which must be heavily encrypted behind a good quality VPN, then you need to change those SIM cards around at least every 2 hours whilst live. Just put it into flight mode, take the slot out, change the cards around. So that means basically the numbers are then transferred to different IMEI numbers, although within the same unit. And of course you'll be using the software that I recommended you to use, which obviously creates subnet mask and also cloaks your IMEI number with a completely false IMEI number. It's just every single measure necessary to throw off the hunters. If you're connecting to a public Wi-Fi connection, again, it has to be heavily encrypted. And it's also advisable to install software on your phone that throws off fake GPS location signals, because that is also vitally important, whilst at the same time making sure that your GPS is switched off at all times. Okay, don't ever have the GPS enabled. It must be switched on, deactivated, and most of the time the phone must be in flight mode. When it's in flight mode, yeah, absolutely, you can connect to a public Wi-Fi. But again, it has to be, as I said, heavily encrypted. Always remember, encryption first. That is the most basic thing. But you'll need to get through an awful lot of pay-as-you-go SIM cards. And, if you're going to do it any other way, just sticking to the same SIM card, then you're just asking to be located and traced. Just use it. Rinse the data and the credit on the SIM card, throw it away, put a new one in. Just keep going that way. That's the way to operate. Remember these vital lessons. It was a great trek, being in the underground, all over England and Wales. I couldn't get out of the country in actual fact this time because I had to surrender my passport after a court hearing in April 2017. And so, in the absence of having false identity papers, which I didn't, and I didn't want to be caught with in actual fact, I simply went on tour and I decided to do a zigzag pattern all over the country. Sheffield, Southampton, Leeds, York, Manchester, Liverpool, Whitby, Somerset, Bath. Crikey, it was all over the place, you know. I was literally weaving a spider's web all over the country, and there was a very specific purpose for it. Not to travel in straight lines. That can be mapped quite easily by the hunters. I wanted to leave absolutely no straight line of angulation that could be mapped or predicted as to where I would go next. So I was literally all over the place. Sometimes, as I said before in a previous episode, I just go to a town or a city just to make a withdrawal, to leave a false trail and then leave straight away, you know. In Brighton, you know, I had a great time in Brighton in actual fact, even though half of the time there was camping on the South Downs, you know, and it was boiling hot in the summer of 2018, but it was wonderful, you know, I enjoyed it. You know, you have to make the underground work for you, otherwise you can't survive in the underground. It is that simple. It's a very difficult place. Newquay, for example, very disappointed, but, you know, beautiful scenery. Horrible town, quite frankly, sadly. Eastbourne, loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Well, it's quite a hike across the Seven Sisters from Eastbourne.
2018,
over 10
went
miles
back
over
to
some very steep
Southampton,
gradients.
back up to Leeds, and then back
I
down
would
to
say it's
Brighton,
about
and back to Eastbourne.
60% of the
Great
way,
times.
a howling 70 mile an hour headstrong wind
always,
straight into the face,
serious,
even when climbing
pressure
up
and stress.
really steep hills.
And
tested every ounce of stamina I
because
had.
there is a breaking point.
Very enjoyable,
And there has to be
beautiful
obviously
scenery,
a
stunning.
coping mechanism.
But I'd say the Malvern Hills was the more serious challenge. But yeah,
as you possibly
today was
can.
wonderful.
Hastings, you know, I went there for just for somewhere to go for the history, you know. And also a very disappointing place. The town has gone down quite downhill quite a bit. Camping on the beach at Worthing, yeah, fantastic, wonderful night, you know. And then Manchester, yeah, meeting Nick and waking up and not knowing where I was because I'd been in so many cities. But yes, it was Manchester, you know, the old ship canal. Unmistakable. Took me 5 minutes to realise it though. And then, of course, Liverpool, which I really enjoyed. I went there 3 times on the redirection route. And yeah, I had a really good time in Liverpool, you know. I much prefer Liverpool to Manchester, which of course will appeal to Liverpoolians, obviously, because of the intense rivalry with Mancunians. But that's just the way it is. You can't like every place. And I don't like Manchester, but I really enjoyed Liverpool. You know, I met some good people there. And there was also an incident where some people from my home came and didn't inform on me, which was good. Weymouth, you know, Dorset, really enjoyed the place. You know, I met the lovely Maria there, you know, a Hungarian. And, yeah, it was sad that I couldn't go any further with her, but that's the underground, you know. You can't form strong attachments with people, which is the thing I learned with Elizabeth. You know, I should never have done that, but I did. And that's the way it was. Yeah, I really enjoyed Weymouth, Dorset, but the problem is my health there was failing. And it was failing quite badly in actual fact. And I had no idea what was wrong with me because obviously I'm not a doctor, I'm just living within the illness, or lived within that illness. And so I just soldiered on, carried on as best as I could. And I thought, oh, it was just dehydration. It will pass. Torquay, a very disappointing place in actual fact, quite frankly. That's all I can say about Torquay, sadly. And Bath, Somerset, yeah, very interesting place. You know, I spent the summer solstice there, you know, in 2019. Really enjoyed the city, very historical, obviously. Yeah, great time, great experience. What's not to like? And then in grimy Southampton, well, in actual fact, it's been up quite a bit. And then back to Cardiff, you know, which was a very interesting city. You know, I really enjoyed Cardiff most of the time. I had some very difficult times there. Health issues, mainly. You know, it was literally starting to fragment, really. The Great Collapse hadn't come. It came a week later. But yeah, it was very interesting. What more can I say? I really enjoyed Cardiff. The history in particular was excellent. And I met some very good people there in Cardiff. There's a letter from the French student. And then, of course, the guitarist and singer, wonderful guy. And then, of course, from Southampton, really quite a hill, I arrived in Oxford, which was close by, really for the final scene.
Unfurled, feeling with anger over the world. Come with me, way down the storm, raise the cup, raise the cup, raise the cup to Babylon. Down from heaven, a woman in white, see her belly, it's big with child, and the dragon waiting in the wind. Power that blessed King, down the rock, speed and flow, feeling it with anger over the world. Come with me, way down the storm, raise the cup, raise the cup, raise the cup to Babylon. Your skin, let the cigarette ride begin. Down there, find your knees, yourself and the feel, the horror of Babylon. Down the road, speed and flow, feeling you waiting all over the world. Come with me, way down the storm, raise the cup, raise the cup, raise the cup to Babylon.
I was staying at this property here in Oxford in October 2016 in the Underground. Thames Valley Police came and they sealed off one of the corridors. The officer looked at me as I walked up the stairs, looked down at his phone, and I was gone. He took his eyes off me. Straight down the fire exit, through the side door, and up along Botley Road. Back into Oxford town centre itself, in actual fact. I didn't run. I took it as quickly as I could, on foot, left my backpack behind. These things happen in the Underground. You have to be prepared to sacrifice everything at a moment's notice. That's just the way it is. Don't get attached. Straight into the bus station, booked a ticket to London, booked into a hotel in Bayswater. Job done. I returned to Oxford in August 2019. Quite ill in actual fact, heavily infected, high fever. I've been in Southampton via Cardiff, and it was a very unpleasant time. But after 3 days I felt well enough to go out for a little walk, and there was a guy stood here right on the footpath and said hello. I said hello back, and we got talking, and he revealed to me that he was a former British intelligence officer with GCHQ. We had about a 20-minute chat about world affairs in actual fact, particularly the Russians, and then off I went back into Oxford. I guess you could say it was the omen that set the scene for everything to come. It wasn't particularly exciting, but it was definitely an omen. Absolutely, I knew it at the time. I didn't have to look back on it. I spent 10 weeks in Oxford recuperating. The longest I'd stood still in the underground. And then on the 20th of October, 2019, I walked along New Inn Hall Street, and I had a very strong feeling that something was seriously wrong. And it grew stronger as I got towards the end. And I actually stopped here at this very point, looking across to the Westfield Centre and Westgate Centre, and I actually said out loud, I can smell the bastards. They're here. And indeed, they were here. Later the same evening, I was sat here, right next to the River Thames, in the dock, and a Thames Valley Police armed response vehicle, BMW, came down here, crawled by slowly to give the game away, I guess you could say. It certainly gave the game away to me, and turned left here off Botley Road onto Bridge Street, crept around this corner. I had full eyesight on it, well, almost full eyesight on it. It did a U-turn here at the Ollybush pub and came back out, turned right onto Botley Road, and it did this 3 times in the space of about 12 minutes in actual fact. And it was pretty obvious then that something major was afoot. You know, the feeling in the afternoon and then that incident at night time. Yeah, it was imminent. I could feel it without a doubt. No doubt at all. The next morning, 21st of October, I sent an email from this position here to my business partner Gareth in North East England and made my way along Park End Street, heading towards the Westgate Centre, just to get a few things for dinner. The next morning I was planning to embark for Leeds and then on to York, and it was very, very obvious that something was amiss here at this position. Absolutely no doubt about it. It just did not feel right. But you know, these feelings come and go in the underground. Sometimes they're very strong, sometimes it's a false positive, sometimes even it's a false negative. But you've got to react to every single feeling you have. And that's the way it is. You've got to be alert at all times and listen to your inner voice, your sixth sense. And I knew they were here, definitely. It's just I didn't know exactly how close they were. And so I walked by the old jailhouse there on the right-hand side, most opportune in actual fact, quite appropriate. Nothing really bothered me that much in the underground, to tell you the truth, after that length of time. I'd been there so long, seen so many things, I just took everything in my stride. That's just the way it was, you know. And I crossed over this road here, heading into the Westgate Centre, and turned right. At this point here, the underground came to an end at this very position here. The hunters closed in. They brought me out through the back in handcuffs, handcuffed to the rear, and we stood here at this very corner on Penny Farthing Place and waited for a Thames Valley police car to arrive and transport me to a police station about 15 miles away in actual fact, where I would be shipped elsewhere. And so, yes, we set off and I was sat in the back. The police officer was a former Royal Marine Commando who'd seen action in Afghanistan. And as we made our long Pembroke Street, I knew then the underground was well and truly over.